Hi, this is Larry Carlton, and you're listening to Icon Fetch.
Welcome to the show. No record label has done more for the genre of jazz over the last decade than Resonance Records. The California independent has unearthed gems from a who's who of jazz, from John Coltrane and Jaco Pastorius to multiple releases by piano great Bill Evans and guitar master Wes Montgomery. Those last two artists are the subject of Resonance's most recent projects. Evans in England features previously unheard live performances from 1969. While back on Indiana Avenue, culls a collection of studio and live tapes of Wes Montgomery right before he became famous. And to talk about those projects, we welcome back to the show Resonance co-president Zev Feldman. Zev, good to talk to you again, man. How are you?
Hey, Tony, it's great to be here with you. I'm doing well. How about you?
Doing well. Now, one of the things, I've talked to you before, and I'm amazed at your persistence of things. And you said in actually the liner notes to both of these releases that these take time. So maybe let's start with the Bill Evans. Yeah. This is this amazing concert from 1969, but it's been in the works. Like, this is something you've been like, these things take time, right?
They do. In the case of Evans in England, it all started with an email I received back in August of 2016. And, here we are coming up on 3 years later. And that's nothing for us. I mean,
right.
I will say, Tony, we're really absolutely blessed at the Resonance label, thanks to the generosity of my co-president, our label founder, George Klaben. We are a 501c3 not-for-profit foundation, and we operate under a different guise of rules, if you will, in terms of what our motivation is. A lot of companies, obviously, are about making profit, but at Resonance Records, we are devoted to the curation of the art, and as a result, sometimes, if it calls for it, we take the time necessary. That can sometimes even mean 5 or 6 years on a release. But in this one, Evans in England, we started in August of 2016. I got an email one day from this gentleman. His name is Leon Turjanian, and he was a tape collector and a Bill Evans hound and major fan. And he contacted me because he had some tape recordings that a friend of his had made that had never been issued before, and we inquired to see if we'd be interested. And they were made in December of '69. I mean, this is Bill Evans at his very, very best, and an incredible period for him. It's right at the beginning of this amazing partnership with bassist Eddie Gomez and drummer Marty Morell, which would go on for almost 7 years. It is the longest trio that Bill Evans kept together. And when you listen to these recordings, it's easy to understand why. There is a connectivity between these musicians. The playing is so inspired. They're having fun, and they just sound like they're in a great place of mind. So it's really exciting listening to these recordings, and these mark our 4th release in partnership with the estate of Bill Evans, which is also very exciting, getting a chance to work with the family and having their blessing and, putting together, taking all those necessary steps needed to bring this release out officially to the marketplace. We even dealt with Verve Records, who Bill Evans was exclusively signed to in 1969, and it's just been great, Tony. So I love this music, and I hope your listeners are going to enjoy it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, and you mentioned, it sounds like they were having fun. I mean, I'm amazed at I'm one of these that likes to take a recording and then find other that same artist doing the recording on other albums and stuff, and trying to compare them. And it's like everything seems to have a pep and a bounce to it. And I mean, you even mentioned like Ronnie Scott's. This was kind of significance in the history of Bill Evans.
Well, it was. I mean, they played a 4-week engagement there, and they had been there for about the same the year before with drummer Jack DeJohnette. But, there is something, and Mark Myers, who wrote the main liner notes for the Packard, really writes this brilliantly, talks about just how London was a place that Bill probably felt very at home, very comfortable, and there's just something about what's surrounding them, in terms of, all these different elements which arguably contribute to this great space that they're all in and making music that's just wonderful. They're having a great time, and these performances are really special.
Well, the other thing that's amazing, you talked about how this guy reached out by email, but these recordings were not ever intended, like this wasn't like a professional, like bunch of multi-microphones kind of thing, right?
Correct. I mean, we don't know the complete setup, but it's quite possible it was, it sounds to me that they were almost taken from the board, but, it's possible that it would have been just a good microphone placement. But they sound good. I don't think the purpose was for these originally necessarily to be released. There was not a record company behind this recording, or as you just mentioned before, you would normally expect that there's probably a sound truck or multiple microphones. It wasn't like that. But the music that was captured really shows us a glimpse into what was happening with Bill Evans and his music in 1969. And, it's Bill Evans in the 60s at his peak. It's so wonderful.
Right, absolutely. And you talk about in the liner notes about how, Bill Evans felt more at ease in England, and part of that might have had to do with sort of what was going on in America. I mean, Miles had gone electric, and there was all this, jazz fusion, and everything was louder and everything, and then you have Bill Evans, who is, doing this acoustic stuff. But, while America was embracing all that, Europe was a little bit different, right?
I think when you look at the European audiences versus the American audience, I think there's just something really wonderful how I think the European audiences really cherish this music and treat it so respectfully. And you hear it even in the audiences. There are people cheering at the end of these performances. He's in a really good space, surrounded by people that are clearly there to hear the music and very passionate about it. But I think that's something on a wider, bigger picture. It's been something, going back to, decades and decades and decades, a very long time here. Since, the 50s and 60s, you just felt like, it feels to me that so many of the European audiences oftentimes, cherish this music perhaps even more than they did than we do in the States. They really appreciate it, and that doesn't mean that there aren't jazz fans here in North America. But I just find there's something really beautiful about it. I think that jazz music is one of this country's greatest exports, and obviously it's something that grows in different ways in different parts of the world based on the influence with the given cultures. So you could even look at France, for instance, as an example.
Right.
And there are scenes there, too. But it's really wonderful, though. But again, I think that Bill Evans just was in a really good place when he was making this music, and it surely comes out.
Right. Absolutely. Now, when this guy reaches out to you by email,
yep, and
he says he has these tapes, I mean, the first time he puts this stuff on, I imagine that, this is, again, it's like, okay, this was done by a collector, maybe not a professional recording, and then this stuff just jumps out of the speakers at you. What was your reaction like when you first got a chance to hear this stuff? When
I first heard this music, I knew instantly. I was like, how special it was. Just the performances were freaking amazing.
Right.
And when I just remember the first time I heard Our Love Is Here to Stay, how that just kind of overcame me. so many wonderful performances on this recording, but I remember the first time I heard Our Love Is Here to Stay, the hair stood up on my arm.
Yeah.
And I just kind of just stopped with what I was doing, and the music overcame me. And Bill Evans has an ability to do that for me and for a lot of people. And I think if you're a Bill Evans fan now, you're going to I would hope that you would have a connection with his music as I have, and I just find it wonderful, extraordinary.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, in typical Resonance fashion, not only do you get the great music, but then you have, again, like going above, and beyond the Call of Duty on these nice, big, thick booklet, and you have tracked down, it almost seems like you sit down with a subject and you go, okay, well, how many directions can we cover this? How many different bases can we cover to try to sort of get this really complete picture of the recording and everything else? I mean, you managed to track down both of the other musicians that played on this, right?
I did. We worked with Eddie Gomez and Marty Morell and interviewed them for the package. It was just great being able to speak with them. And we've actually worked together on another release, too, now with Eddie Gomez. We've worked together on 4 releases.
Wow.
But if you go back to our very first Bill Evans release, live at Art DeLugoff's Top of the Gate, Marty Morell is on there, too, and that was where we first connected back in, I want to say it was 2010, when we started working on those releases. It's some journey, but working with both of them was great, and they had some great anecdotes to share and talking about their time with Bill. And Bill Evans touched both of these guys, and it's just it's great. But we always try to involve, getting back to the subjects that are involved in our packages. We really try to take a look at the narrative and including individuals who have a voice in the concert, have something relevant to contribute, and we're very happy to have them both.
Right. Now it has to be kind of odd here in 2019 to say that the debut of the Bill Evans recording was out on vinyl. I mean, isn't that just crazy?
It's wonderful, and
right.
I want to thank everyone from Record Store Day who has helped Resonance Records grow. Record Store Day and doing these vinyl deluxe physical issues are a big part of our branding and what we've done and what we're getting a chance to be known for. And we will schedule typically our biggest releases of the year around 1 or 2 of the events, usually either in November for the Back to Black Friday event that they do, day after Thanksgiving, and obviously in April, as we just had here.
Yep.
But we're so grateful to them. It's great. I love the vinyl. I love that we're back on analog again and talking about that and experiencing it. There's all sorts of different ways to experience audio. Vinyl and CDs is one part of it. We also do very high-resolution, super high-res downloads through 2X HD audio, exclusively with them as well. And we really try to present the music as best as it can be presented in all sorts of different ways, depending on what your tastes are. And coming later this summer, we're going to be streaming our back catalog, including our other Bill Evans releases. So we're also entering a whole new paradigm here. But you're talking to a physical guy. I've got over 5,000 LPs here alone at home, and I love music, man. All sorts of different ways we can ingest it.
I'm with you. Yeah, I have I don't have 5,000, but I have several thousand, and I have a turntable in my kitchen that I just brought up as a lark, and then my wife's like, "So when is it going to leave?" And I'm like, "I don't think it's ever going to leave. I love it, man." That's like, I don't know.
Great.
So
great,
yeah.
Man.
So let's switch gears and go to Wes Montgomery. I mean, again, you did Bill Evans. You've done a bunch of Bill Evans releases, and I think you've done even more Wes Montgomery releases, right?
We have done a couple more Wes Montgomery releases. This new album, Back on Indiana Avenue again, the Carol DeCamp recordings, marks our 6th release with the family. And it is just so extraordinary. I got to tell you, like with Bill Evans, Wes Montgomery is also a hero of mine since a young age. And, my father used to play Wes Montgomery when we were growing up at home. And I became a fan on my own as well, and I love his back catalog of so many of these classic albums that he did, and he was a pioneer, and working on these projects is really special. But especially at the Resonance label, we have been able to go back to an era which, before we came along, really didn't get to be put under the microscope as much, and I'm talking about the mid to late 1950s.
Right.
And this new set of recordings back on Indiana Avenue again, it's really a continuation of our first Wes Montgomery release, Echoes of Indiana Avenue. They were actually all recorded, both that album and this release, by a gentleman named Carol DeCamp. And when I say recorded, I should be very careful. I don't know if he was exactly the recording engineer but on these recordings, but he was responsible for having them made. Carol DeCamp was an arranger and a pianist. He worked with everyone ranging from Les Elgart to Stan Kenton. And in the 1950s, he was friends of Wes Montgomery and used to travel around and follow him through the city. And this guy, Carol DeCamp, had the foresight to recognize how important Wes Montgomery was and decided that he was going to help preserve him. And these recordings are all under his guide. So it's very exciting for us to have this period going back and listening. And, these have never been issued before. This is, I think, a major revelation for jazz fans that after decades and decades of his passing, Wes has been gone for 50 years. He's been gone since 1968. And I think that it's a great thing that we've been able to not just find this music, but present it and tell the story about it and celebrate Wes, celebrate Carol DeCamp. And I'm also really happy about this book. There's some contributors here that helped us, and I want to say it was a major team event. First of all, Lewis Porter, many folks know from Rutgers University. He's also a recording artist and a scholar as well. He was a major force in this project in getting us the music to listen to. I want to say that the tapes also exist because of a very important guy in the music education world. I'm talking about saxophonist Jamie Aebersold. And in the late 1980s, early 1990s, Jamie Aebersold received from Carol DeCamp these tape reels of the music before you, and he transferred them to Dad. Well, Mr. Aebersold returned the tapes to Carol DeCamp, and unfortunately we know that Carol DeCamp's home burned down. Everything was lost, including the original session reels. So if it wasn't for Jamie Aebersold, we wouldn't have these recordings, and I think it's very important to acknowledge that contribution. And, we also wanted to take the liberty of speaking with Carol DeCamp's family, so we had his brother Malcolm gave us a very nice interview. We also were able to speak with Carol DeCamp's nephew, who is a guitarist named Royce Campbell that many folks will know because he's even played with Henry Mancini and been a prolific recording artist in his own right.
Nice.
And he was also able to tell us the story about growing up and hearing these recordings and being the nephew of Carol DeCamp. And last but not least, we were able to spend some time with legendary guitarists George Benson and John Scofield.
Yeah.
So you got to tie it up to, it's like tying it all together with a bow on top.
Right.
These were two guys that I wanted to speak with for a very long time about Wes. And, it's about a 55-page book in the end. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into this package. And, we just worked really so hard to help preserve Wes Montgomery's legacy and, again, to celebrate him.
Now, and if we put some perspective on this is right before Wes got signed to Riverside, right?
It is. So if I had to be a betting man, I would say that these recordings were made somewhere between 1957 to 1959. We also hear some of the earliest recordings of songs that Wes would become widely associated with, compositions such as Jingles, West Coast Blues, Mr. Walker. It's just a great set, and I think it includes incredible playing. I think the fans will listen to this and be amazed how developed he was, but it should really be no surprise. He obviously had the goods going into his recording contract and time that would play out in the upcoming years with Riverside and then eventually with Verve, but you hear how strong he is here. His playing is just so strong, and it's so interesting to listen to it, and it's so nice because you're going to be familiar with some of the music. So it's great stuff.
Now, when you started both of these, being associated with the Bill Evans estate and the Wes Montgomery estate, I'm pretty sure you didn't think that you would be doing 4 releases with Bill Evans or whatever, and then 6 releases with Wes Montgomery. I mean, it's just crazy. Every one of these, do you go, is this my last, or do you go, well, I mean,
well, we try to make them all count, and I think we put the same amount of love and care into these releases. It's been a blessing that we've been able to have this sort of longevity working with these families, and I love it. I take this so seriously, what we do, not just making the record, but even getting a chance to speak with folks like yourself about these projects. It's incredibly important, but we take this job so seriously. So even if we're going to be fortunate with a future release, who knows for sure? But I'll tell you, we're going to give it the same amount of love.
Right, absolutely.
And this is what it's deserved.
No, and you talked about streaming, and that's kind of a sticky subject for a label like yours, because really you have kind of flown in the face of all of that, in that you almost it's like, I don't know how to put it in words. It's like you're daring people to just listen to it on streaming because you get so much more in the physical package. It's so much more of a complete picture with the big booklets, and you usually grab a lot of archival photos and stuff like that. So
sure.
I mean, so that's kind of the streaming is inevitable. I would say, because that's just kind of where a lot of people are ingesting their music, kind of thing. But but it's certainly not something that Resonance is going to get away from the physical. I wouldn't think so.
Never, ever. We are going to be committed as long as we can to physical. I think it's become a touchstone for us, and a trademark for our packages is to have that elaborate amount of editorial that's devoted towards telling the stories about the musicians and using those images and having it be about beautiful artwork. Oh, man. So, but I think at the same time, there is definitely an audience out there that's missing out. And I hope that this will be an opportunity of creating a gateway, if you will, for folks to discover our projects. If they listen to it on streaming, I hope that they're going to double down and pick up a copy of the physical edition, whether that's CD or whether that's vinyl. It's a completely different experience. But, Tony, these days, it's become so different for us all, the way that we listen to music. Now, for me, I spend a lot of time outdoors, and my Bluetooth, my music comes with me where I go. So for me, I want to be able to reach people in the car these days. I hate to say it, but you and I both know that even CDs aren't standard in cars.
Nope.
So
no, they're not.
We need to grow with the times. We need to be able to reach our larger audience. I think that there's more people out there that would enjoy these packages. And I felt that we had gotten to a point that we needed to find ways of connecting.
Right.
And that's what this is about. This is not about turning our back on physical. We are still committed, as we ever have before, about doing physical presentation. We love independent record retail and folks that go to brick and mortar. It's very important for what we do. But this is not turning our shoulder to anybody. We are just looking at this as being a way of, hey, come learn about us.
Right.
But there's some of these titles here that have never been released before streaming.
Nice.
Most of our catalog. So
Yeah.
this is going to be a new thing for us. Good. We just want to make sure that we're connecting with all the music fans out there, and it's been such a wonderful journey for us. I think back, Tony, to the last time you and I spoke. It's been a few years.
It has been a few years, yeah.
And so much of this other stuff has advanced for us, and the growth of our label and the music out there, and I'm really happy. You're doing your thing, man, and we're all just kind of chugling along here.
We are. Yep, exactly. And, it's a hybrid. That's what it's all about. It's about, you and I both still love physical music, but yep. I stream music all the time, too. You know what I mean? So that's just the way it is. So tell me, can you talk about anything, or is it all top secret, hush, hush? What do you have on the runway kind of thing?
Well, at the Resonance label, I'm very excited to say we have a quite ambitious box set that we're putting together for the holiday season right now, and that's going to be from the late, great Nat King Cole.
Oh,
it's called Hittin' the Ramp, the early years, 1936 to 43, and this is a box set that collects all this incredible material that he was doing leading up to the road to Capitol Records. A lot of people also forget the fact that Nat King Cole was an incredible pianist. He literally, if we have to look at the Mount Rushmore of jazz piano, he should be up there right next to greats such as Art Tatum and Earl Hines. But the reality is that we're going to work very hard on this mission to reestablish him and as one of the great pianists and artists that he is, and we're so honored to be working with the Nat King Cole estate and the family. It's just a tremendous privilege for us. So that's really the next big record we're working on. But I will tell you, we are always working on business development and other projects and ideas and things that we can be doing.
Right.
So I'm very happy. There's no end to that in sight. We are putting together deals and looking for things all the time, and I would encourage any of your listeners out there to reach out to me on Facebook, Zev Feldman, and you can also, you never know. I could be getting the next email from one of your listeners telling me about the next big discovery.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff out there. We just got to keep doing our part, and I'm excited by the promise of the new day.
Right. You and I are friends, and I'm just amazed that, I'll see a Facebook post and you're in some foreign country again doing
I'm so lucky.
Right. That's
to do
awesome.
what I love.
Yep.
I am so lucky.
I told you, man, we need to get you a cape. That's what it is. You're like the jazz superhero right now. It's like
I'll take it.
Right.
Tony.
Awesome. Well, Zev, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Zev Feldman, the co-president of Resonance Records. There are 2 new releases that they have. Wes Montgomery, back on Indiana Avenue, and Bill Evans in England. Zev, we appreciate the chat, and we look forward to talking to you soon about more releases, all right?
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Icon Fetch with Tony Peters. Want more great interviews? Head on over to iconfetch.com. There you'll find every interview we've ever done, plus CD reviews, This Day in Music, and a random album of the day. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. Who's Tony going to interview next? It could be you. Send us what you've got to Tony Peters, Icon Fetch, P.O. Box 292134, Dayton, Ohio. Zip code 45429, or email Tony, host@iconfetch.com. Until next time, this is Joe Kelly. Have a great day.